Sports betting will be coming to Colorado. Voters giving the thumbs up to Proposition DD, which will take taxes on sports betting and use that money to pay for Colorado water projects. Welcome to Politics Unplugged. I'm Ann Trujillo, and that was the only statewide issue getting the go-ahead from Coloradans in what turned out to be a very interesting election day in Colorado. We'll talk about several issues ahead. Now, as for DD, it passed by 43,000 votes, just under 3%, and there is plenty more that needs to happen before you start placing your bets. Casinos are now working with state regulators to get their sports books and mobile apps in compliance with the law. They have to do that by May 1st of next year, the earliest day sports betting can begin, so we will, of course, keep you posted on that. And while Prop DD passed, Prop CC did not. That's the ballot proposal that would have changed Colorado's Tabor laws to free up millions of dollars for things like education and roads. Coloradans seem to like getting the refunds, and this all means that once again, lawmakers have major issues to address when they head back to the Capitol in January. Well, joining us to talk about all of this is Speaker of the House, KC Becker. So thank you so much for being here with us. What happened?
So we put Prop CC on the ballot knowing that Colorado ranks really in the bottom of the country for spending on K-12, spending on roads and bridges, and spending on higher ed. And so we thought if we put a pretty modest proposal, it doesn't increase a tax, it didn't create a new tax, and it's averaged about $35 per person per year, that maybe voters would support putting more money into transportation and education.
And they said no.
And they said no.
Was it the wording? I mean, where do you think that the fight came for you?
You know, I think we had good wording. I think that the No campaign ran a very vigorous campaign. They are just saying that legislators should find the money in the existing budget. They said that you couldn't trust if we were actually going to put it in the budget. Now, put the money into those things. And of course, we were very specific in the proposal and in the bill and in the statute that would have been enacted that the money would go a third to transportation, a third to roads, a third to K-12, and a third to higher ed. So we're going to have to go back and figure out how are we going to address ever-shrinking revenue for transportation out of the existing budget.
So a couple of things. Do you think that Coloradans simply like Tabor? I mean, is there anything that you can do? Could you consider eventually going back and saying, let's just get rid of Tabor altogether? So
I think most Coloradans don't know what Tabor is. Of course, it's the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and was passed in 1991. And it says you have to go to voters to ask for a tax increase. Right. But it also creates a statewide limit on our ability to keep the taxes that we're already collecting. And that's the part of Tabor that we were addressing here, to say, voters, we're not even allowed to collect the taxes, to keep the taxes we're already collecting. Can we do that? So that was really unfamiliar to people, and they thought, what do you mean you're not allowed to keep the taxes you're collecting already? So I think we had a burden to overcome in explaining that. And I think, you know, will people go back to the ballot to address Tabor? I don't know. We in the legislature probably aren't going to. We're going to just get back to the fundamentals of saying, gosh, we have a 22-cent gas tax that's a gallon that's been 22 cents a gallon forever, since 1992. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's not indexed to inflation. That is, you know, there are more efficient cars on the road, and construction costs are growing. So it's an insufficient revenue source for transportation, for roads and bridges and things like that. We're going to have to figure it out because every state around us has increased their taxes for transportation. Colorado hasn't. It's a problem. And so that's transportation. What about education, which is the other big issue you raise? I mean, Colorado ranks last in many instances. Yeah, most of our school districts are on a 4-day school week. Our teachers are the lowest paid in the country, and more and more of the burden for funding education is being shifted from local governments onto the state. So that's creating a problem. It's creating a real crunch on the budget at the same time that we're seeing healthcare costs grow. So higher ed and K-12 are getting squeezed, and you know, we obviously want to leave the best state for our own kids that we can. So we're going to keep trying to figure out how we can have a really good school system all throughout Colorado. but not have that average about $35 per person to help with that.
So with less than a minute to go, looking forward to this legislative session, without trying to reinvent the wheel, where do you look to find this funding? Where do you help leave this place a better place for our kids?
Yeah, we definitely won't have enough to do what we want for transportation or higher ed or K-12 within the existing budget. So I think those things are going to continue to get squeezed. If we don't have voters' permission, we can't do more.
KC Becker, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely appreciate it.